Have you ever felt completely alone, even when surrounded by people? Have you ever been in a place where pain seems to echo off the walls and the only thing that accompanies you are the tears that insist on falling? This is the story of a woman who reached her limit. She cried alone in a hospital room with no one to hold her hand, without an answer, without hope. But what she didn't know is that in that same room, something supernatural was about to happen. Many people believe that miracles are a thing of the past. But what if I told you that even today, in the midst of pain, loneliness, and despair, God continues to act? That when the world turns its back, He approaches. This story will show you that there is an exact moment when the sky moves, and maybe you are closer to it than you think. She was not famous, nor well known. There was no one publishing phrases of support, nor group prayers for her. It was just her and the silence. The diagnosis was cruel. The disease progressed. The doctors didn't have good news. And the friends, they disappeared. Days passed. Hope hid. The forces were exhausted. Maybe you understand exactly what she felt. That feeling of abandonment, that God is silent, that nothing will change. But what if I told you that it was in this exact scenario that everything started to change? It's impossible to hear what happened to her and not get goosebumps, because when the pain seems unbearable, when the room gets dark, when the phone doesn't ring, when the medicine doesn't work, God can step in, and when He enters, the natural transforms into the supernatural. This story is not just about suffering, it's about faith, miracle, starting over. It's about a woman who, even though she had nothing else to offer, decided to cry out. It's about God's actions behind the scenes of life, in silent rooms, in tearful dawns where no one sees, but the whole sky is standing. You need to hear what happened next, and I invite you, stay until the end. Because this story is not just hers, it could be yours too. You will understand why we should never give up, even when everything seems lost. What happened to her could transform the way she sees faith, God's time, and her own suffering. If this message is already touching your heart, comment below. I believe in God's supernatural, and share with someone who needs hope. Because sometimes, all it takes is a moment, a tear, a prayer, and everything changes. And before continuing the story, I need to tell you something that can no longer be ignored. We are living in difficult times. Times in which evil disguises itself as normality, in which pain has become routine, and faith often left aside. The signs are everywhere. Illnesses that arise without explanation, hearts made sick by loneliness, and lives being led before their time. Do you feel this too? As if something bigger was about to happen? This is no coincidence. The Word of God warns us that in the last days, love would grow cold and many would be tested. And that's why stories like the one you're hearing now cannot be treated just as a passing emotion. They are warnings, touches from heaven for those who still have their eyes open. When God acts supernaturally, He is saying, I'm still here, but time is running out. So if you are here, it is not by chance. Maybe this story will be your wake-up call, your calling, a confirmation that there is still time, but not time to waste. And that's why I ask, you enjoy this video right now. This helps this message reach those who are on the verge of giving up. Subscribe to the channel, because every day we are bringing real, strong, and prophetic testimonies. Stories that not only edify, but awaken. You need to be prepared. You need to be informed, not just because of the news on television, but because of what heaven is saying through each transformation, each miracle, each unexpected response. And here on this channel, we are committed to this. Share what God is doing now these days, while many are spiritually asleep. Then activate the bell. Stay with us, because what comes next in this story is simply unbelievable. Her name is Mariana, a young woman full of life, full of plans, of expectations for the future. He had a smile that lit up any room, a strong presence, the kind that inspires even without saying a word. I worked, studied, dreamed of traveling the world, building a family, making a difference in people's lives. It was one of those that everyone wanted around, always ready to help, always with a friendly word, with a hug at the right time. But life sometimes changes direction without warning. It all started with a tiredness that wouldn't go away. One pain here, another there. Little clues that at first no one takes seriously. But the body gives signs. And when she finally decided to investigate, the diagnosis came like a sentence. A rare, aggressive disease that was already progressing. It was as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Mariana couldn't understand. Why with her? Why right now when everything was working out? She sought strength where she could, in friends, in the family, in hurried prayers before bed. But over time, everything started to empty. Health was the first to go. That energy that made her run all day gave way to a fragile, tired body that needed help even to get out of bed. The hair fell out. The mirror is no longer a friend. Then came hope, and along with it, some friendships. Because unfortunately, many people only stay when everything is going well. In the early days, messages came frequently, visits too. But as the weeks went by, contacts decreased. Conversations became shorter. Excuses started to appear. And suddenly, she was alone. Alone in a white hospital room, listening to machines beeping, feeling time slip by without answers. The pain in the body was intense, but nothing compared to the pain in the soul. The loneliness, the abandonment, the feeling of being forgotten even by God. And maybe you, who are listening to me now, have already been through something similar. Maybe it's passing. Maybe you know that feeling of looking around and not seeing anyone, waiting for a call that never comes, to scream in silence and not be heard by anyone. Mariana was exactly there, at that point where many lose faith, where the question why begins to echo inside the mind like thunder. Why did God allow this? Why didn't you stop it? Why were you silent? And deep down, she didn't want theological explanations nor complicated answers. She just wanted a sign, a presence, something that said, "You are not alone." The following days were even more difficult. Doctors came and went with neutral expressions. The tests showed that the situation was getting worse. Options were running out. And she, there, wondered if she would still see sunlight outside that hospital. If he still had any chance of returning to the life he loved so much. If there was still time. If there was still hope. And here I want you to stop for a moment and reflect. How many times have you felt like everything was lost? That your desert was too big, your pain too strong, your struggle too long? How many times have you thought that God had forgotten about you? This story you are hearing now is not just about Mariana. She carries within her fragments of her pain, of her journey, because all of us at some point have been Mariana. And that's why this story needs to be told, because she represents thousands of people who are living in silence, who cry at night alone, without knowing that the whole sky is watching over them. People who just need a spark of faith to continue. They just need to hear, there is still hope. And if this story has already started to touch your heart, leave it here in the comments. I'm not alone. Because this sentence, written with faith, could be the beginning of a new stage for you, and perhaps also for someone who reads your comment. But listen carefully. While you are here watching, there are people in your circle, friends, family, neighbors, who are facing invisible battles, physical illnesses that corrode the body, emotional illnesses that suffocate the soul, depression, anxiety attacks, lack of hope. And do you know what the problem is? Most of them don't speak. They are silent. They put a smile on their face, but they cry inside, like Mariana. That's why this story needs to reach more people, because each testimony is a seed of faith, a reminder that God is still at work. And now I need you to understand the seriousness of this. We are approaching times where pain will become more and more common, but spiritual sensitivity will become increasingly rare. And if we don't open our eyes now, it might be too late. So if this message makes sense to you, don't wait. Enjoy this video now. Yes, right now. This is not just a way to engage. It's an act of faith. Positioning. Every like makes. This video reach someone who may be on the verge of breaking down, and subscribe to the channel because it's not just about content, it's about being attentive to what God is saying these days. This channel is a watchtower, a space where lives are being alerted, awakened, edified, and you are part of it. Every time you share, comment, support, you become an instrument. You help spread hope, opening the eyes of those who are still blinded by pain, because the end is approaching and the voices that announce God's actions need to be multiplied. We can't waste any more time. Do you realize what is happening around us? Diseases emerging as modern plagues, technology advancing but hearts becoming sicker, science trying to explain everything except the absence of peace that so many people feel. The signs are being fulfilled. The pains of the end time are here. And the most dangerous thing is that many have already become accustomed to the chaos. But here, on this channel, we chose not to remain silent. And you can be part of it too. Be part of something bigger. Leave your like now. Sign up. Comment. Spread this message. Bring light to those in darkness. Because what's to come is just the beginning. And about Mariana, well, what happened next will affect you in ways you perhaps never imagined. Because when everything seemed over, the sky began to move. And that's when her story starts to change. But to understand how, you need to stay with me. They were long days, where the clock seemed to mock time, where the hours dragged by as if every minute was emotional torture. Mariana no longer counted her sleepless nights. The only company left was the repetitive sound of the machines monitoring her heartbeat, as if each beep confirmed the obvious. She was still there, but for how long? Visits that were once frequent have become rare. The few who said, "I'm with you until the end," fell silent, moving away, slowly disappearing. She looked at her cell phone and there were no messages. He tried to force a smile when one of the medical staff entered, but his eyes were already swollen from crying. The physical pain was real, yes, but the pain of absence, of abandonment, of everyone's silence, that hurt deeper. No one was there to see her when she tried to call her closest friend, and the call went straight to voicemail. No one listened when she whispered, "Help me," and no one responded. It was at this point that the mind began to play against the heart. Thoughts of discouragement, doubt, and giving up came. Has God forgotten me? Was my faith in vain? Is this all punishment? Faith, which before seemed like a strong flame, now trembled like a candle in a strong wind. And maybe you, who are following me, know exactly what this is. The point where faith begins to waver, where the miracle seems so far away and the only thing present is the hot tear running down your face. Mariana was no longer crying just from pain, but from exhaustion. It was as if his soul was tired. Painful exams, invasive procedures, answers that never came. The doctors talked about protocols, but their eyes no longer held hope. And you know how it is. Even when no one says anything, the look speaks. And their eyes said that the worst was approaching. She tried to hold on to the memories, to the promises of a God she once felt close. But now, everything seemed far away. She looked up at the ceiling of the room and whispered, "Lord, if you're still there, listen to me. Give me an answer. Anything." It was at that moment that she said a simple prayer. Nothing rehearsed, nothing pretty, just an outpouring of soul. A broken delivery from someone who no longer had anything to offer other than his own suffering. And here it is important that you understand, God does not need beautiful words. He answers sincere hearts. And what Mariana didn't know is that the sky was already moving. Because a sincere prayer has the power to pierce the silence, break the impossible, and activate the supernatural. Maybe you think it was just another prayer, but it wasn't. It was the breaking point, the line between the end and the beginning. Because there is a place in pain where many give up. But those who choose to cry out, even without strength, even in tears, discover that God still answers. And you, have you reached that point yet? Have you prayed tiredly, cried out with tears, talked to God when you thought he was too far away? Comment below, I have prayed in the midst of pain. He writes this as a confession of faith, because sometimes writing what we experience is the way to encourage those who are about to stop. In that white room, with the smell of alcohol and loneliness, something began to change. Not on the devices yet, not in exams, but in the spiritual environment. Because when someone cries out at the bottom of the well, the sky bends down to hear. Mariana didn't know it, but there was an invisible movement happening. While she thought she was being ignored, angels were being sent. While she thought no one saw her, God himself was there, beside her, holding each tear like precious jewels. And this is where a mystery comes in that many don't understand. God's silence is not absence, it's preparation. The enemy wants you to believe that silence is abandonment, but it's not. Silence is often the space where God organizes the miracle. He doesn't work in noise, he works in essence. And there, deep in Mariana's pain, he began to act. But as in every good story of faith, before the miracle manifests itself, the pressure increases, the scenery darkens, desperation seems to suffocate. That's exactly what happened. The day after that prayer, the pain seemed even more intense. The doctors seemed more tense. The nurse's look was more serious. Mariana thought it was in vain. Until that, God did not respond. But she was wrong, because God was already acting, just in a way she couldn't see. Yet, this is exactly when many people give up. They pray and expect an immediate answer, a visible sign, an instant cure. But it's not always like that. Sometimes the miracle starts invisible. Sometimes the first symptom of healing is an increase in pain, because the enemy gets upset when he realizes that something is about to change. He wants to make you stop before you break up. And perhaps that is your reality today. You prayed, but nothing happened. You believed, but everything got worse. And I want to tell you, with all spiritual authority, don't stop now, don't give up, because often the miracle comes disguised as silence. Do you know what happened to Mariana after that prayer? Something that science cannot explain. Something that not even the doctors themselves believed. But before I tell you this, I need you to do something very important, like this video, right now. Because this message needs to continue reaching people who, like you, are living at the breaking point. People who are praying with tears, who are in a hospital bed, or in a dark room thinking that everything is over. Every like pushes this story further. Every comment activates faith in someone. And subscribe here to the channel, because we're still going to tell you what happened to Mariana, and it will surprise you in a way that you might not even be prepared for. Are you ready to understand how God acts even when no one else believes? So hold on tight, because what comes now changes everything. It was in that early morning, when the silence seemed louder than the noise of the world, that Mariana, not knowing what else to do, murmured what was perhaps her most honest, most raw, most profound prayer. With her eyes swollen from crying, with her body weakened by pain and exhaustion, with her soul crushed by the lack of answers, she just said, "God, if you still see me, give me a sign." These words were not spoken with strength, nor with hope. They were whispered between sobs, like someone who throws the last stone into the sea and waits without faith for something to return. But it was precisely there, at that exact point of total surrender, that the sky moved. The room remained the same. The devices still beeped at regular intervals. The cold light from the lamp still illuminated the white walls. Nothing seemed to have changed to natural eyes, but there was something in the air, a presence, a slight heat, a different silence, not empty, but full of something, invisible, full of something holy. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, because sleep had become a distant luxury, but like someone trying to escape pain, reality. And it was at that moment, at that exact moment of surrender, that a soft light invaded the room. It wasn't the light from the window, it wasn't the reflection from the lamp. It was different. It was as if the darkness had receded. She felt like someone was there, not with the eyes, but with the heart. A peace took over his chest. Not that peace that can be understood, that can be explained, but that peace that surpasses all understanding. And maybe you've already felt this. Maybe in a service, maybe in a solitary prayer, maybe in an early morning where no one else heard you, except God. It is this peace that tells you, even when everything falls apart, I am here. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you great and hidden things which you do not know." Mariana didn't know this verse by heart. She didn't even have the strength to open the Bible on her cell phone anymore, but at that moment, she lived this verse. Because God responded, and he did not respond with noise, with spectacle, with audible voices. He responded with presence. And sometimes the biggest answer is this: feeling like you are no longer alone. Mariana, with her eyes closed, felt something different touch her soul. It was as if a weight were lifted from my chest, as if the chains of hopelessness were breaking. One by one, she was not healed at that time. She was not discharged the next day, but something started there. Change, and all change begins in the spirit before manifesting itself in the body, because God works from the inside out. And that's why many people give up before the miracle arrives, because they want to see with their eyes, but God wants to transform the heart first. She didn't tell anyone what she felt, not out of shame, but because I didn't know how to explain it. How do you explain something that only the Spirit understands? She just kept it, and from that moment on, something inside her began to reorganize. The tears still came, but now they carried something more: faith. His voice was still weak, but now he spoke with certainty. The pain was still real, but it no longer had the power to crush her, because when God enters the room, everything changes, even if everything looks the same on the outside. And now, listen to me carefully. Maybe you are too this morning. It doesn't matter if it's 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. Your soul may be experiencing a dark, cold, lonely dawn. And if this is your case, I want you to comment here now: Lord, I trust in you. Write this not as a stock phrase, but as an act of faith. Even if your emotions say otherwise, even if your reason is screaming, do like Mariana. Cry out, trust, because God still responds, still visits lonely rooms. He still invades dawns with his presence. It still turns tears into seeds of miracles. The next day, when one of the nurses entered the room, Mariana was awake but different. The eyes, which were previously dim, now had a discreet glow, almost imperceptible, but present. She didn't say much, just said thank you. The nurse didn't understand. I didn't know what had changed, but something was there. Even doctors noticed days later that the results began to show unexpected variations. Nothing definitive yet, but enough to take away that defeated look from the team. And here comes a spiritual principle that you need to keep. The miracle begins within. Healing begins with faith. Transformation begins with the decision to trust, even when everything screams to stop. Mariana, by trusting in God that morning, activated a new season in her life, a restoration station. Not immediate but progressive, not visible all at once, but real. Can you feel it where you are? Because I feel it here. This story is not just about Mariana. It's about you, about everyone who won. They reached rock bottom and discovered that there was a ladder, and the ladder was God. The question now is, Will you trust? Are you going to deliver even if you don't understand? Will you continue even without seeing it? If the answer is yes, comment now. I leave everything in God's hands, because when you write this, you seal something. You declare. You activate in the spiritual world the same key that turned Mariana's life around. And when you least expect it, you will feel that same peace invade your room, your soul, your story. It could be early in the morning. It could be now. God still visits those who cry out. And if you've made it this far in this video, it's no coincidence. It's because heaven is calling you to trust. And hold on tight, because what started that morning was just the beginning. What happened in the following days was the kind of thing that medicine cannot explain, that reason cannot understand, but that only those who believe can witness. And I will tell you every detail, because the supernatural didn't stop there. He was just getting started. It was that same week, exactly a few days after that broken prayer, said between tears and sobs, the first signs began to appear. The nurse, who already knew Mariana's history, entered the room for another routine procedure, without much expectation. She didn't expect any changes. Nobody expected it. The protocol was just to maintain, control the pain, continue with palliative care. The truth is that doctors no longer believed in recovery, but God doesn't follow human protocols. It is not limited to diagnoses. He does not consult medical reports before taking action. That morning, Mariana woke up to something different. It wasn't a sudden change, but there was something about her body that she couldn't explain. A lightness, a subtle energy. The pain, which had previously been constant and unbearable, was less severe. The appetite, which had disappeared for weeks, reappeared timidly. The nurse noticed this. He took notes, and he commented to a colleague, "She looks different." Mariana's eyes, previously dim and immersed in pain, now shone with a new light. She didn't know what was happening, but he knew who was behind it. Routine exams were done, blood samples, images, data. At the end of the day, the first doctor entered the room with a confused expression. He looked at Mariana, then at the paper in his hand, then back at her. "We're going to repeat the tests tomorrow, just in case," he said. She nodded with a calm smile. She didn't need explanations, because when God starts to act, we feel it before we see it. Over the next few days, the numbers continued to change, rates normalizing, the images showing reduction where there had previously been advancement. Signs of improvement, small at first, began to become evident. The doctors, previously restrained, began to look at each other in the corridors. They commented discreetly. It was as if something out of logic was happening. One of them even said, "That doesn't make sense." And another replied, "Or it does. It's just not something we can explain." It was then that one of the hospital's oldest nurses, known for being serious, distant, and extremely professional, entered the room. She approached Mariana's bed, looked into her eyes, and said something that left her completely speechless. "God told you to tell you that you are not alone." Those words echoed like gentle thunder in her heart. It wasn't the first time I'd heard something like this. The other nurse had also said something similar days before, but now it was confirmation. It was as if heaven itself was reinforcing. "I heard, I saw, I am here," Mariana cried. But now they were different tears. Tears of faith, of gratitude, of reverence. She didn't yet know what the future held, but she knew she was no longer fighting alone, that God was by your side, as he always was. And this is where I ask you, do you believe that God still speaks? That he still sends messages when we need them most? If yes, comment now, "God speaks to me," because this statement is more than a phrase. It is a key of faith that opens doors of revelation. In the days that followed, the transformation intensified. The doctors changed their tune. The exams left no room for doubt. The disease that had previously advanced unchecked was now regressing. What was considered irreversible began to be re-evaluated. Mariana, previously discredited, began to rise again, With each new result, his faith grew stronger, and with each firmer, deeper breath, she felt the breath of life being restored. And it wasn't just the body that began to heal. His soul was also being restored. The sadness that consumed her gave way to gratitude. The fear that paralyzed her gave way to courage. Loneliness was overcome by an unshakable certainty. God was there all the time, and when she thought he was silent, he was just preparing the right moment to reveal himself. Can you understand what this means? It means that no cry is in vain, no tears are wasted, no sincere prayer goes unheard. Sometimes, the miracle doesn't come when we want it, but it always comes at God's exact time. And when it arrives, nothing, absolutely nothing, stays the same. The hospital that once looked like a prison was now an altar. Every hallway, every room she passed through now bore the living testimony of the supernatural. The very professionals who previously treated Mariana as a terminal case now looked at her with admiration. Doctors, nurses, assistants, many approached, no longer with clipboards and protocols, but with questions. What happened to you? And she could only respond with one sentence: God touched me. And that is the power of a true testimony. It breaks down arguments. He overcomes skepticism. He confronts unbelief, because there is no denying it when the transformation is visible. Mariana, who before was just another patient in the midst of so many complex cases, was now an example. It was a miracle. It was living proof that heaven still moves for those who trust. And maybe that's why you're here, listening to this story, because God wants to remind you that his time is not over, that there is still hope, that there are still miracles, that there is still transformation. When the day of discharge arrived, everyone was silent for a few seconds. It was as if the environment had been invaded by something sacred. She left the hospital walking on her own 2 feet, smiling with a sparkle in your eyes, with a heart full of gratitude. He hugged every professional who crossed his path. He thanked them one by one, and each hug was more than a gesture of politeness. It was a silent testimony. She was alive, she was cured, and not because of medicine, although I was grateful, but because of divine intervention that changed the course of its history. Today, Mariana is a living witness that the supernatural exists, that when everything seems lost, when the doors close, when the reports are definitive, when the world is silent, God reveals himself. He still does. He still acts. It still transforms. And now, more than ever, I want you to write here in the comments, I believe in the supernatural of God, because that statement is powerful. It activates faith. It breaks doubts. She attracts miracles. And if you've experienced something similar, if you've seen God act when no one else believed, share your story. Here, your testimony could be the spark that rekindles someone's faith. But it doesn't stop here. What happened after Mariana's discharge is as impactful as the healing, because God didn't just restore her health. He began to write a new chapter, and I'm going to tell you, because this story isn't over yet. How many times have you felt like this, alone, even surrounded by people? How many times have you looked to the side and seen no one? Or worse, did you see people, but felt like none of them really saw you? How many times has the pillow been the only confidant of your pain, absorbing tears that no one ever knew existed? Maybe you don't even have the strength to say it out loud, but deep down, you carry this weight. Perhaps, like Mariana, you are waiting for a sign, one touch, one word, something that tells you that you have not yet been forgotten, that there is still someone listening, that there is still a God looking at you, even when everything seems too dark. And I don't know how you got to this video, whether it was by chance, curiosity, a shared link, or those accidents that we already know are God's disguised plans. But the fact that you are here now, listening to this story, feeling every word, is because heaven decided to get closer to you in a special way, because the pain you feel is not small. And God knows. He knows every dawn when you tried to be strong, when everything inside you wanted to give up. He saw that moment when you said quietly, "I can't take it anymore." And even when you thought he was silent, he was just waiting for the right moment to respond. This video could be the sign you asked for, not because of production, not because of history, but because the Holy Spirit is here. You are using this narrative to touch the most hidden areas of your heart, to remind you that God's love has no expiration date, that you are not forgotten, that what He did in Mariana's life, He can do it in yours. And I'm not saying this as a cliche. I'm speaking as someone who believes with all my heart that the supernatural is still real, that miracles still happen, that true transformations are still possible, even in the worst-case scenarios. How many times have you felt like you prayed and no one listened, who asked for help but no one reached out, that He smiled on the outside, but inside He screamed for help? Loneliness has been the greatest pain for many people. The lack of answers, the silence of people, the feeling of invisibility. And maybe you're living it right now. But I want to tell you with all the faith I have in my chest, God has not forgotten you. God did not move away. God did not turn His back. His time may seem slow to our human logic, but He never stopped seeing you. He never stopped caring. He never abandoned you, even when it seemed like everything was lost. This story is not just about a woman who was physically healed. It's about a soul who was visited by heaven when the world had already given up on her. And this same visit could happen to you, today, now, wherever you are. Because God doesn't need a temple to act. He just needs a heart willing to say, "I need you." And if this story spoke to you, comment below, "Lord, I know you are still with me." Write this with faith, even if it is little, even if the fear is still there. Because the act of declaring this truth, even with tears in your eyes, is like planting a seed. And seeds of faith never go unanswered. They sprout at the right time. They bear fruit. They change destinies. Can you feel it? Because as I speak here, I know that there are people feeling a different heat in their chest, a desire to cry without understanding why, a presence that invades the environment, even if you are alone in a room. This is God. It's not a script. It's not emotional manipulation. It's the touch of the Holy Spirit saying, "I see you. I'm here. I never left you. And now I need to ask you for something that goes beyond a simple engagement. Action. It's about spreading that truth, that presence, that hope. Enjoy this video now, yes, right now, because the algorithm may deliver random content every day, but when you interact with stories like this, you're helping that message reach someone who needs it urgently. Maybe someone who was already decided to give up on life and who, by watching this video, finds the strength to live another day. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Not just to follow the next videos, which yes, will continue to bring testimonies, words of faith, real stories of transformation, but to be part of something bigger. It's not just about content here, it's about community, about faith, about walking, about listening to stories that renew, that strengthen, who lift up those who have fallen, who remember that God still acts. And if you are already part of this family, comment, "I am living proof of God's actions." And if you can, share this video with someone, a friend, a family member, someone you know needs to hear this. Because you can be the instrument that God will use to reach a wounded heart. And there is no greater honor than participating in a miracle in someone's life. Perhaps, like Mariana, you are waiting for that moment when everything changes. Maybe your body is tired, maybe your soul is on edge, but God can turn the key now. He can transform the most unlikely scenario into a miracle. He can make life flourish in the desert. He can make the sun rise, even after the darkest nights. And the amazing thing is, He wants to do it. He wants this. He is calling you, drawing you, reminding you that there is still a purpose. There are still promises, There is still a way, and you are one step away from experiencing it all. A step of trust, one step of delivery, a step of faith. Then take a deep breath. Allow this presence to envelop you. Allow this truth to heal you. Allow this story to not just be a YouTube video, but a turning point in your journey. Because what God started in Mariana's life was just the beginning. What came after the healing was even more profound, more revealing, more impactful. And I will show you, because this story isn't over yet. If you've come this far, it's because something inside you felt it. Maybe it was a memory, an old pain that came to the surface, or even that feeling that this story, even though it happened to someone else, seemed, in some way, to speak directly to your soul. And do you know why this happens? Because God knows every heart that hears this type of testimony. He knows exactly what you needed to hear today. He knows about the battles you've been fighting in silence, the anguish you try to hide, the tiredness that no one sees. Mariana could be just one case among many. It could have been forgotten by statistics, reduced to a number in a medical record, labeled as impossible to cure. But God doesn't work with labels. He works with purpose. And He used her suffering, used her pain, even used her silence to generate a miracle that is reaching you today. Because yes, every testimony is proof of God's love. And that love is personal, it's real, it's supernatural. But now, the time has come when you too can become a part of it. This video is not just a watch and forget video. He's a calling, a breath of faith, an opportunity to multiply what heaven is doing. Enjoy this video right now. It may seem simple, just clicking a button, but spiritually speaking, it's like saying, I agree with this message. I want more people to be reached like I was. Each like increases reach, pushing this content into the eyes of someone who may be about to give up on life. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Not just for me, but for you, because here every week God is telling stories that renew hope, that prove that the supernatural still happens, that testify to God's actions in real life today, now, while many think that He has stopped speaking. And more than following stories, here you will be part of a community of faith, people who believe together with you, who pray, who comment, who virtually extend their hand. Because even on the internet, God unites hearts. Even from a distance, the Holy Spirit operates. And there's more. Share this video. Don't keep this story to yourself. Think of someone now, a friend, a brother, a neighbor, someone who is passing through a desert. Send it to that person. Write something simple along with the link, watch this, God will speak to you. You can be exactly the bridge between that person and a reunion with faith. And maybe she will never tell you, but one day you will know that because of your simple gesture, a life was transformed. And if you are already part of this community, comment here now. I spread faith because I believe in God's actions. Let's show the world that there are still people who believe, that there are still people who do not conform to the spiritual coldness of our days, that there are still hearts burning to bring hope where there is only darkness. And you know what? Jesus Himself taught us that we are the light of the world, and light is not meant to be hidden. It is made to shine, so shine now. Leave your like, sign up, share, comment. Use every button on this platform as a tool in the hands of the kingdom. Because yes, God can even use YouTube to save a soul. You can even use a simple video to enter a home, a confused mind, a broken heart, and there make everything new. Mariana was healed, restored, transformed, and today, more than a physical miracle, she carries within her a mission. Take this story to as many people as possible. Show that God has not remained silent. Show that prayer still works. Show that there is hope even in the worst diagnoses. And you can also load this quest now, because you were reached, touched, built, and now it's your turn to pass on. And there's more. If you've experienced a miracle, small or big, recent or old, share it with us in the comments. Write your testimony here. Tell us what God has already done for you. It doesn't matter if it seems simple. What you consider small may be exactly the word someone needs to read to continue. Remember, one testimony liberates another. When you tell what God has done, you activate faith in others. You show that the impossible is still real. You become a channel of transformation. And if you're still waiting for your miracle, don't be discouraged. Stay here with us. Here you will hear stories that will sustain your faith on bad days. You will see living proof that God's timing is perfect. You will learn that sometimes the process is long, but the purpose is greater. And that, while the answer doesn't come, God continues to support you, sometimes in silence, sometimes in tears, but always with love. So comment now. I believe, I hope, I trust. Write this like someone planting a seed, because you will harvest at the right time. And when you harvest, I want you to come back here in this same video to tell what God did. And together, we will multiply this movement. Because the world needs to hear, need to see, need to remember, God still works miracles. And the most beautiful thing is that the miracle in Mariana's life didn't end with her discharge from the hospital. What came next was even more surprising. It was as if heaven said, "Now that you believe, prepare yourself, because my purpose goes far beyond healing. It goes far beyond you." And that's what I'm going to show you next, because her journey with God, and maybe yours too, is just beginning. And the most extraordinary thing is that what God started in Mariana's life didn't stop at that hospital. That healing was just the first step of something much bigger, because when heaven touches earth, it's not just to solve a problem, it's to inaugurate a new purpose. And you will see how this woman who used to cry alone in a bed became a channel of comfort for other lives. The supernatural that she experienced didn't just stay with her, it overflowed, it impacted, it bore fruit, and the way it happened will surprise you. Get ready to find out what happens when someone decides to not just receive the miracle, but live for it. In the next chapter, you will understand how God turns pain into a mission, how he uses scars to heal others, how he writes stories that no human script could predict, and what he started in her life may very well be about to start in yours.